Hi, Greg.
Hi, Pat.
I think it's high time we talked about the Scooby Gang.
Oh, I love the theme song. Scooby-Dooby-Doo, where are you?
No. Not that Scooby Gang. Buffy. Even better. Welcome to Passion of the Geeks, the show in which two friends and fellow geeks talk about geek and pop culture and everything else we enjoy. I am Pat.
And I'm Greg.
And let's get on with it. Hello, Greg.
Hello, Pat.
How are you feeling?
I'm fine, and you?
I confess I'm a little nervous about today's episode. We have a huge task ahead of us.
As always. As
always. Nervous but excited. But before we tackle today's topic, let's talk about the short follow-up you have. Don't you, Greg?
Yes, I tried to play Baldur's Gate, the game or the early access game you recommended last week or last time. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't get it to work, so I did the next best thing. I started playing Wasteland 3, which, as far as I understood what you described last week, is basically the same, just in a different setting. So for those of our listeners who are not familiar with Wasteland, it's basically the predecessor of Fallout, set in a post-apocalyptic America, and you're controlling your team of rangers and you have to complete missions, and it's very RPG-like. And I love Fallout. I really enjoy turn-based combat, and Wasteland 3 is that for me. So I've been playing on and off for the last 2 weeks, and I quite enjoy it. And I'm looking forward to playing a similar game with a D&D fantasy setting. So until then, I just hope I'm finished with Wasteland 3 before Baldur's Gate comes out.
Well, you have quite something to do then, don't you? It's a big game.
Have you played Wasteland before?
I have played the very first Wasteland, and I've played Wasteland 2, which I also backed back then. I love both of them. I didn't have the chance to actually play the third one, but it's on my wish list.
It's a pretty good game. If you like Wasteland, if you like Wasteland 2, you're going to like this one as well. The one thing that maybe puts some people off is the crude humor, moral ambiguities. But if you enjoy those things, which I tend to do from time to time, it's a perfectly good game.
If it's half as good as the other two, it's really a recommendation.
Yeah.
It's my turn. It's almost November at the time of this recording, and we all know what we were looking forward to most in November. I'm, of course, talking about Cyberpunk 2077. And yes, it has been delayed again for 21 additional days until December 10th. And a lot of people are disappointed because of this. And I mean, it's understandable. I too was really looking forward to play it. CD Projekt Red has been very open when communicating with its fans, and they explained very neatly why the additional delay happened. Because what people often forget is that we're not talking about one game. It's basically one game, but there are 9 different versions of the game, and they need to get them all running correctly. And yes, next gen consoles are partly to blame, but interestingly, one pretty loud voice in the community was to just forget about the older consoles and just focus on PS5 and Series X. And I don't think that would be a good idea at all. But yeah, if anything, I probably would have waited with the dedicated PS5 and Xbox ports. Cyberpunk will certainly be a next-gen system seller this Christmas season, so I kind of understand why they're doing this. But one thing I wanted to briefly mention is the fact that a lot of people didn't understand what the Gold Master in this day and age actually is, because they had gone gold and they published that and people were like, oh, great, it's finished, the game is on. And nowadays, it doesn't mean the game is completely finished. It just means that it's feature complete, that all assets are finished, and all the game logic is in place. But the Gold Master gets mass-produced and packaged and everything, and it's usually the version we get in the stores. But nowadays, you rarely have a release that actually consists of the things on the Gold Master. 0-day patches are more common. And in my opinion, they're actually a good thing because, I mean, why stop when you still have time to polish your game until the official release day? So I think that's a good thing. People are often a little bit disappointed about 0-day patches. But, I mean, if you buy it on Steam or anywhere, you don't really feel them. They just get installed with the game. There's nothing to worry about. But it raises a question, and maybe a question for you, Greg. Why buy a physical medium if all you get is an obsolete or sometimes even incomplete version? Why are people still buying physical games? What do you think?
Because I don't have fiber yet. That's basically my main reason. And as you mentioned, 0-day patches are a two-edged sword, actually, or a double-edged sword. On the one hand, I obviously would like the best version of the game when I start playing. On the other hand, I buy the physical disc because I don't want to wait 20 hours until the game downloads. But I put in the disc and then it tells me, oh yeah, you need to download 10 hours worth of game material in order to play your game properly. And that's a thing that annoys me a little bit.
I totally understand your reasoning. I often think that people believe if they buy a physical medium, then they own the game, and they don't own the game if they don't buy a physical medium, even though it means the physical medium, if, say, Steam or some other sort of server-based thing is turned off, it's still no longer playable, at least not in the version you're looking for. Maybe that is one thing, to have this entire wall of games. You just want that. It's maybe similar with books.
I don't think that it's just that, but there have been cases where a game just stopped being playable.
No, that's true. It happens occasionally, yes.
Some old games, I'm just able to play them because I still own the physical discs. Or kind of the physical media, and through emulation or whatever, I'm able to play them. Of course, I could go to gray area sources and get them from there, but I like owning an old piece of software and being able to still able to use it, as long as the hardware still works.
Yeah, obviously.
If I own the physical media of, let's say, Cyberpunk 77, as long as my PS4, PS5 is going to work, I'm going to be able to play that version on that disc. Even if the whole PlayStation system, for some reason or whatever, shuts down. Obviously, not going to be able to get the updates, not going to be able to use all the features, but I'm still going to be able to play the game. And that might still be a reason for a physical media.
Yeah, I think you have a good point there.
One thing I would like to add is, obviously, I'm disappointed as well that Cyberpunk was postponed. But at this point, I'm okay with it because it just means that I won't be tempted to play Cyberpunk on my PS4. I will just start playing it on my PS5. So, yeah.
which will be the better version. So you don't need to buy it twice.
I hope so, yeah. I hope so.
Okay, Greg. I think you still have some news for us, don't you?
Yes, I have two news items on my list here. One very weird one. There are news about the Snyder Cut. We have talked about the Snyder Cut a couple of times already, and it's shaping up to be something really, really weird and strange. They're spending a lot of money. And recently they announced that certain actors are returning to film scenes for the Snyder Cut. But strangely enough, some of these actors have actually not been part of the original Justice League movie. So Jared Leto is returning or is coming on to Justice League in the role of the Joker. And I have absolutely no idea what that's supposed to be about because, at least for me, the Joker in Suicide Squad was one of the things that definitely did not work for me. So why would you put something that, my opinion, clearly does not work into your movie that has other problems as well? I just don't get it. I'm not the biggest fan of that whole project anyway, but I think at this point, it just looks like it's going to be basically something like a car crash that you don't want to watch, but you just have to. That project gets crazier and crazier. Any opinions about that, Pat?
The thing is, as we said in our very, very first episode, I think there has been a time I was excited about this. And now I think what they're actually doing is kind of cheating, if I may say so, because they're not making just another cut of the same movie. They're making, I think now it's a mini series. They have additional scenes they're recording. They have all the reviews in the world to see what did work and what didn't. This is just, I would say it's a remake that uses some of the same scenes. So I think there is actually no way that the Snyder Cut will be worse than what it would have been if Snyder would have made the real first cut of the movie, if that makes sense. It's a new movie. There is all this flowing into it. It must be better than the cut that we got in the theater. So I think this is actually cheating, and it's not a fair comparison between these two, or at least that's what I think. Do I make sense?
Yeah, you do. I mean, to summarize what you're saying, at this point, it's pretty obvious that there never was a Snyder Cut, and they're just making it right now. That's obvious at this point. Yeah, that's obvious at this point. So I guess we'll have to do an episode about the Snyder Cut.
We certainly have to.
Maybe a running commentary or something like that. Because, I think, as I said before, at this time, I'm not interested. But I think I just have to see it just to believe it.
We definitely have to see it and then talk about that. Definitely.
Yeah. The other piece of news I have is actually quite sad. I just learned a couple of hours ago that Sean Connery, the original James Bond, passed away. He was 90 years old. So, he lived to a respectable age. But it's still sad that, in this horrible year 2020, that we're losing people like that as well. And I actually think he is my favorite James Bond. I liked him in a lot of other roles as well. The Rock, for example. In my head canon, John Mason from The Rock is just James Bond who was captured by the Americans. That's what I want to believe. It's just really sad. Rest in peace, Sean Connery. That's all I can say at this point.
Yeah, rest in peace. So then, let's go back to something more enjoyable. Do you have something to check out, Greg?
There are two things on my check this out list. One, very briefly, not sure if people have heard it already. There is a new Borat movie out. Borat, the famous character by Sacha Baron Cohen. And I don't want to say too much about the movie, just I found it highly enjoyable and very interesting. One thing I would like to do, though, is just give you the full title. And if that doesn't make you want to watch the movie, I don't know what. So the movie is titled Borat Subsequent Moviefilm, Delivery of Prodigious Bribe to American Regime for Make Benefit Once Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan. Enough said.
I'm sold.
And the other thing, yesterday the Mandalorian Season 2 had its premiere. I watched the first episode, written and directed by Jon Favreau. And yeah, it was just a cool episode again. They really leaned into the Western themes. So yeah, yesterday's episode was clearly just a Western set in the Star Wars universe. And I don't want to spoil anything. There are actually some interesting characters who are part of the episode. And yeah, the task or the mission that Mando is on is also very interesting. And compared to some of the other Star Wars that Disney has put out recently, I just really like that The Mandalorian shows me a part of the Star Wars universe that I'm familiar with, but populates it with other people that are not part of that big saga. Or even if it populates the show with, even if the show gets populated by people who are at least adjacent parts of that saga, it still makes them interesting and makes the universe bigger than the Skywalker saga movies did. So yeah, Mandalorian Season 2, highly recommended. What about you? Do you have anything for us to check out?
Yes. I actually first wanted you and our listeners to check out something else, but since it's Halloween and we're talking about the Vampire Slayer, I decided that I will talk about something else. A game where you are the vampire. And that game is Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. It's an RPG first-person shooter hybrid. It was released in 2004. And it's set in the World of Darkness by White Wolf. And you actually play one of the vampires. There are a couple of clans you have to choose from. And then you're a fledgling vampire and you are thrown into the modern day Los Angeles. And from there on, it's an open structure. It's not really open world like we have it today. There is a level structure, but you can go back and forth between these levels, so it's not linear. There are a number of missions you can do, and the role-playing aspect is actually very, very emphasized. And even though the game was released in 2004, it's well loved. It has a huge community around that. They're still creating patches for the game. In fact, the last patch was released in September this year, I think. So they're still trying to fix the game, make it better. And yeah, I mean, you could sort of play a good vampire in the sense of how good a vampire actually can be. But you are basically evil and you fight among these other vampires. It's really great. And there is an overall plot that's pretty great. It's just a very, very good game. Have you ever heard from it?
No, I've never heard of that game.
Yeah. I think it's not available for Mac right now. It's just a PC game, if I'm not mistaken. and it's not available for consoles. But if you have a Windows PC, you definitely need to check out the game, because it's really, really awesome. Plus, it's fun being a vampire.
Where would I get it?
It's still available with most game services. It's on GOG.com and it's on Steam, so it's easy to get. It's just very important that you also download the patch so that's actually playable on a modern system. But I will link to them in our show notes.
Okay.
Highly recommended. All right, then. That's our Check This Out segment. Let's dive into the story of the week, shall we?
Yes, we shall.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer. One of my favorite TV series ever. What about you?
Yes, mine too. It's up there with, there are some other shows, but Buffy, one of my favorite shows, and will always have a special place in my heart. And it's one of those show titles when I tell people, Buffy the Vampire Slayer is one of my favorite shows. It usually elicits a laugh, especially from people who don't know the show. But everyone who knows the show usually agrees that it is one of the best shows ever. On many, many television lists, it's usually quite high on those as well. So it's not just us two who enjoy or enjoyed that show. I think there's a large consensus about the fact that Buffy is a really, really, really good show.
Because it is. And you're completely right. Every time I mention Buffy the Vampire Slayer, you immediately have either the reaction of, yes, Buffy, or you have the eye rolling of people who have never seen Buffy.
I once saw an interview with Joss Whedon where he explained the title, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And the way he explains it, it makes perfect sense. So Buffy, funny name. So that's the comedy element of the show. Vampire, ooh, scary. That's the horror element of the show. And Slayer, oh, Slayer, that sounds awesome. Action, that's the action element of the show. So humor, horror, action. Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think it's a perfect title.
I've never looked at the title like this, and it makes perfect sense. Even though I have to admit, maybe as an adult, the horror element isn't that bad, because I'm actually not a huge horror fan, but the fun and the action parts definitely are stronger than the horror aspects.
I would say so, yeah. I mean, there are a couple of episodes that lean into the horror element a little bit more than others. But mostly it's a fun action comedy show.
Exactly. I mean, you can see when you start watching the show that there have been some budget cuts. So they kind of had to get that BBC feeling of making an episode that you always describe. And it does not always work as well as in BBC series. But if you look past the obvious budget, the episodes are so deep and thought-provoking and have so much heart in it that you don't notice the budget anymore.
I slightly disagree here because I actually think the show looks pretty good. The show started in 1997, and obviously CGI and computer animation stuff that was very expensive. But I think the show managed to, obviously they were restrained in their budget, but I think they managed to get a pretty good show out of it. And I especially kind of season 1 and I think season 2 as well, they shot on 16 millimeters. And I think they make it look good. And the graininess of that 16 millimeter film stock, at least for me, enhanced the horror-y, action-y adventure vibe a little bit, because it did not look as polished as other shows set in a high school. And for me, that made perfect sense. So I'm actually quite happy with the way the show looked.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, it's not that as bad as I made it sound. It's just with today's eyes, it looks a little bit dated, especially the first season and part of the second. But you really can get behind that. That's not an obstacle, I think. When did you first see Buffy?
I can't remember, actually. I try to remember. I'm pretty sure that I've caught a few episodes in German on television. And the next thing I know that I either owned the DVD or that I was watching live as episodes kind of released in America. So I would say I probably started in 1998 maybe, or maybe 99. What I can definitely say is that I watched the last 3 seasons, 5, 6, and 7. I watched those live. Interestingly enough, I immediately knew that this was a show for me. So that's probably how I got so fast from learning about the show to being a huge fan. It just, basically ticked all my boxes, and I was a huge fan of all the characters. Still to this day, I think all the Buffy characters, the core group, or even people who were introduced into the group, they're just really good versions of these character archetypes you have in horror adventure shows. And every character just had something that made him or her interesting and dear to my heart. So obviously I could identify with Buffy and everything she had to go through. I could identify with Xander. I could identify with Willow. I thought Giles was pretty cool. Even Cordelia, maybe not especially during Buffy, but maybe later during Angel. Even she had something that I could connect to. What about you? How did you get into Buffy?
Well, I think our stories are actually similar, because I've watched Buffy first in German. I think it was on Saturday afternoons, but I'm not quite sure about that. I don't remember exactly. I think it was Saturday afternoons. And I also kind of think I remember that the marketing for Buffy was a little bit strange. I don't think that German TV channels actually understood what the series was about. And I know I didn't watch it from the very beginning. I came in a little bit later. And there were already things I realized I had missed. Even though the show has a kind of a Monster of the Week structure, it still has a lot of ongoing character development, which is great. I love that mix. It's not a soap opera, and it's not just a simple everything is back to normal at the end of each series, like, say, The A-Team or Magnum, or where you can basically watch any episode at any time and you still have the same fun. You can feel that they progress, they develop, and they actually always mention a lot of adventures they had already experienced. And so I immediately knew that, there is something missing. And much like you, I bought a set where I could watch that. And then I watched it in English, and it was even better. And I think, much like you, I think I watched the last 3 seasons live with the American audience. Or it could be the last 4. But more likely like you. And I got the episodes some way from the internet to being able to watch them back in the early 2000s, which was quite an undertaking. But
the wild, wild west days of the internet.
Yeah. We didn't have internet speeds like today. I mean, we're complaining we don't have fiber yet. But back in the 2000s, that was bad. Yeah. But it was so worth it. I absolutely loved the series. You already mentioned the different characters. And to me, each of the characters were brilliant. Buffy, the girl that actually destroys all the vampires. There was Xander, who had this witty dialogue and a lot of pop culture references. And there was, of course, Willow, who later turned out to be a witch. But at the very beginning, she was the nerd, the geek, basically. And I felt immediately relatable with Willow. And I must confess, I had a huge crush on Willow.
Who didn't?
But the interesting thing is, I loved Giles as a mentor. And now when I rewatch the series, Giles does no longer feel like a mentor, but actually Giles is the character I identify with. The wise guy who actually gives advice to the teenagers. And so it's still very watchable for me. What do you think?
You described something very interesting. Looking back at Buffy, and I think we mentioned that in our pilot episode when we talked about the Buffy pilot. I really like about Buffy that it's a show that uses this monster of the week to talk about issues growing up. So it's not about a show about killing a monster each week. It's a show about solving a problem that a teenager has that is just, personified by a monster. And the whole idea of these longer story arcs is exactly that as well. So you have your little problems that you have to solve each week, your little monster that haunts you for that particular week. But you also have bigger issues that stay with you for a longer time. And that's, for me, the season arc. So, and the idea to have this metaphor realized by turning the horror trope of the blonde young girl who goes into the dark alley and gets killed by a monster upside down. Yeah, that's just brilliant. And for me, that's probably one of the reasons why so many people connected with the show, because it was just cleverly made. It had those cool story arcs. It had those cool episodes, the monsters of the week that actually meant something. And it had the witty banter of Joss Whedon. So that mix, just worked for a lot of people.
Yeah, it was a brilliant mix. As you said, the way how monsters were always a metaphor for some kind of problems they had. That worked so well that he actually continued to do that in the spin-off in Angel. But today is not the day we talk about Angel, is it?
Yeah, that would definitely make it as a 2-part episode. But we will definitely cover Angel, because there are days where I prefer Angel and there are days when I prefer Buffy. So both shows very dear to my heart. But let's talk about Angel another time. And obviously Angel was an important part of Buffy as well, especially season 1 and very much in season 2. Mm-hmm. So he's basically a metaphor in Buffy as well. So he has his place.
That's true. Shall we talk about some iconic episodes of Buffy, I think one of the episode is that we need to talk about is Innocence. And you already mentioned what it's about.
Just a quick spoiler-free summary. So basically what happens in Innocence, it's in the middle of season 2. And it's the first big culmination of the Buffy Angel storyline. And basically it's the idea, and it's obviously probably more for girls than for boys, but for some reason I could still feel with Buffy. Yeah, what happens if the guy you sleep with turns out to be an asshole?
Exactly.
And yeah, obviously in Joss Whedon takes it to 11.
I just wanted to say that. Just think about that and then turn it to 11 and you get the gist of Innocence. And it's a very iconic episode because there are a lot of people kind of idly watching Buffy, and some of them probably didn't get the metaphors of certain monsters of the week. But this one, everyone got. It's a very iconic episode.
Yeah. But again, it speaks to the strength of the show, because even though those monsters were ridiculous and over the top and everything, and yeah, we just said that even in this episode, they kind of dial it to 11. But at its core, there are real emotions, real feelings, and at least I think that that's what makes this whole thing work. If people could not relate to what Buffy is going through, yeah, it's just an episode with lots of violence and a little bit of over-the-top acting. But if you connect to the emotion, it's one of those episodes where you just suddenly start to hate a person you actually felt very good about before. In this case, Angel. And whatever you think is the most brutal way to continue that storyline, they find a way that is more brutal. I have to admit, Buffy season 2, because of that whole storyline with Angel, probably my favorite season of all the Buffy seasons.
Season 2 does have a very cool ending, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, the season 2 ending is a little more personal than others. It's not as grand.
I would say from an emotional point of view, it's actually very grand.
Yeah.
Without spoiling too much, there are basically two plots. One plot is people trying to restore Angel's soul, and the other part of the action is Buffy having to fight Angel and stopping the apocalypse. And yeah, I think some of our listeners can guess how the season ends.
Oh, yeah. As you said, from an emotional point of view, it's a very tough season finale. In a sense, one of the more defining metaphors. What else would you suggest would be one of the truly iconic episodes for Buffy?
I mentioned before that for me, Buffy was always about the witty banter and the funny dialogue. So what does Joss Whedon do in season 4? He writes an episode without dialogue, or at least where kind of most of the episode is without dialogue. I'm obviously talking about season 4's Hush, where the gentlemen are coming to town, steal everyone's voices, and Buffy and the Scoobies, they have to basically save the town from these gentlemen. And it's an interesting episode. So one of the best exposition scenes. Giles basically uses the overhead projector to do his mission briefing, so to speak. Funny scene. But the whole episode, by kind of getting rid of language, is about communication. So it's as long as the people can't talk, they have to communicate, because story arc of the season, there are lots of underlying problems that the Scoobies have to deal with, And while they can't speak, they're actually able to, communicate about those problems. But as soon as they can talk again, they're silent and they don't know what to say. So, wonderful metaphor again. So, I assume you like Hush as well.
It's definitely a very, very special episode. The gentlemen are creepy as hell.
Creepy as hell, yeah.
They really work well. And the whole not talking thing, as you said, you explained it splendidly, Greg. So there's not much to add. It's just an awesome episode.
Do you have an episode that you would mention?
Yeah, I just wanted to go, because you talked about something silent, I wanted to go from a episode that doesn't have, or almost doesn't have, dialogue to an episode that doesn't have any music whatsoever. And I'm talking about The Body. In The Body, Buffy's mom dies. And I know we're spoiling here a little bit, but we need to talk about The Body as an episode. Buffy's mom dies. Of course, everyone thinks a demon or a vampire was it. But not this time. It was kind of foreshadowed a couple of episodes earlier. She had some sort of a shadow on an MRI scan or a CAT scan, or what she did. And so it was foreshadowed that there was a problem in her brain. And then in that episode, Buffy comes home and her mom just lies on the couch and is dead. And it's such a deep episode because Buffy goes through all the motions that anyone would have, like imagining that the paramedics are coming and reviving her and stuff, or she looks for a vampire or someone who had killed her mother, but at that point it's just life that sucks, her body that failed, and the way the whole Scooby Gang gets together and shares that grief makes it such an excellent episode. And any other TV series would have, the sad music on top of it, but not just Whedon. It's complete musical silence, and it works all the better for the lack of music. It's an awesome episode. It's very, very sad, but awesome. Do you agree?
I obviously agree that it's a really, really good episode. For me, it also works with the metaphor of the show, because I always looked at that episode as, sometimes there is no monster you can slay.
Exactly.
I actually applaud the decision to, have Joyce die for natural causes and not supernatural ones. If Buffy is a show about growing up, sometimes growing up means that you just have to grieve and go through these stages, and that there are situations in life where you can't do anything to stop anything bad from happening to you or your loved ones. And by having Joyce die from natural causes, it's a lesson that Buffy has to learn as well. And her mother dies not because of something she did wrong. It's not her fault. She did not fail. It's not that she was not able to kill the vampire who later kills her mom or whatever. It's, just sometimes life just sucks and does not have a soundtrack. So, that's The Body. I think one of the best television episodes from any era about death that there is.
Oh, yes. Yes, definitely. Well, that was a kind of a bummer episode. Shall we go into an iconic, more upbeat episode, or at least somewhat more upbeat episode?
Most of the really good Buffy episodes, they kind of have some element that is a bummer.
Yeah.
again, those are the emotions that you connect with. But there's definitely one episode, at least in the beginning of the show, that is upbeat, that is fun, that has a lot of feeling. Once More with Feeling, season 6, the musical. There are other shows that have musical episodes, but let's be honest that Once More with Feeling is one of the best ones. First of all, the singing was motivated by something that happened in the show. And the reason why they sang, the reason why the singing was important. And yeah, it's a companion piece in a way to Hush, where Hush was the show where people communicated because they were not able to talk. Once More with Feeling is the show, or is the episode where the people communicate by singing. And like in every good musical, if you can't if speech is not enough to convey your emotions, you sing. And if singing is not enough, you dance. And Buffy, Once More with Feeling is exactly that. And it ends on a sad note as well, because Once More with Feeling is the episode where, the Scoobies basically learned that, when they brought Buffy back from the dead, they did not rescue her from hell. They took her out from heaven, which is, obviously we're glad that Buffy is back in the show, but ripping someone from heaven, probably not the thing you intended to do.
Yeah.
I assume you're a huge fan of Once More with Feeling as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, usually in other shows, when there is a musical episode, it's just some, I would say, mindless fun. As you said, there is a real reason, an in-universe reason why they're singing. But you basically said it. The big thing is that during this episode, each of the characters, or basically each of the main characters, has a song that actually develops its own character. Everybody has some kind of character development in that episode. It's not a gimmick episode. It's one that's really important in the context of the season itself. And that is something that is not easy to do. So this is really great. I actually love the episode. I don't like all of the songs, but especially the opening song, that's a cool one, the Going Through the Motion song. And sometimes some other songs I wasn't such a huge fan of. What I was a huge fan of was Giles' singing. He has a really great voice, and that episode was actually the reason why I later watched Repo, the genetic opera, where the actor actually has a bigger singing part. Yeah, I'm not really happy with the concept of the afterlife that Buffy introduces. It's on the hell's mouth, and obviously if you have hell, you might have a heaven as well. But I wasn't all that happy with that conclusion, personally. But, I mean, it's still a great episode. And it's certainly one of the most iconic episodes of Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
It is, yeah.
What about other episodes you like? Are there some favorites?
There's one episode that probably not everyone thinks is a great one, but for some reason I always enjoyed that episode. It's the Zeppo.
Yeah.
It's the episode where Xander feels like he can't really contribute anything to monster slaying. And while Buffy and the others have to close the Hellmouth once again in a B plot that you know absolutely nothing about, Xander has a run-in with some shady characters. They turn out to be vampires. And they want to blow up the school or something.
Yeah, I think I remember.
So
correct.
basically what happens in that episode is that Xander, without anyone else knowing, saves everyone's life. And it gives him some sense of accomplishment, and I would say is a very important episode in his character's development, because it shows him that he can actually do stuff as well, that he is a valuable part of the Scoobies, that he's an important part of the Scoobies. It's just that his skill set he might not be the fighter, he might not be the sorcerer, but he is, to use D&D analogy, he's probably the bard.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It's probably the bard. So yeah. So that's what I really like the Zeppo.
Well, I completely agree. I like Xander. Sometimes if I talk about Buffy with someone who just watched a couple of episodes and is not all that into Buffy, they often tell me, well, Xander is kind of useless because Buffy is the Slayer and Willow is the witch. She has magical powers, and Xander is just, yeah, he just tags along. And it is true, as you said, he's not a wizard, he's not a slayer or a fighter, although he can deal some punches. But if you kind of go with the thing that Buffy is the muscle and Willow is sort of the brains of this teenage triangle, then Xander, in my opinion, is the heart. He is the one who actually gets everyone back on track. He is the one who is there when there is something amiss. He is the one who can, I mean, besides the Seppo, there is one excellent episode. It's much, much later. It's when Willow loses her girlfriend and is so much in grief that she starts to become, well, basically evil. It's Xander who manages to win her back. And I mean, these are just 2 episodes where he really is shining, but he's always there for everyone. I really love the character.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, well said. Yeah.
So the Zappo is an excellent episode. I like that a lot. I also like episodes where Buffy is kind of not at the high point of her powers. For example, The Wish, where Cordelia wishes that Buffy wouldn't exist or wouldn't ever have come to Sunnydale. And it also introduces Anya, who I think is a really cool character. And I like these kind of episodes where it's not Buffy who saves the day. I mean, she usually is the one who saves the day, but where it's not Buffy. And I mean, The Wish is great because Xander and Willow play some evil counterparts, which is a lot of fun to watch. Or another is, I think, Halloween, where they dress up and they become their costumes, and Buffy kind of dresses up as a damsel in distress and thus becomes a damsel in distress. I think that's an excellent episode.
Yeah, they're obviously great fun. Just quickly about The Wish.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, Evil Willow is one of the reasons why we had a huge crush on her.
I'm not commenting on this. It might be true. No, the crush was before The Wish, but
that sealed the deal.
That sealed the deal. Yeah. And I was so glad she came back. Evil Willow Wamp Willow came back in. I think it was Doppelganger Land, wasn't it?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just loved Willow. Another episode you want to highlight?
Obviously, Buffy had some great season finales as well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so there is the awesome season 3 finale, Graduation Day.
Yes.
Yeah, season 3, really cool season as well. Great big bad with the mayor. I just love that he was so good-hearted about being evil. And still to this day, I really enjoyed that before he wanted to kill everyone, he still gave his graduation speech.
Yeah.
Because that was important as well. So Graduation Day, very cool season finale. Overall, season 3 really good with Faith and everything. So really cool season. But probably my favorite season finale is season 5, The Gift, where Buffy sacrifices herself. That's the episode where she gets into whatever that version of heaven is in the Buffyverse. I always read it as a not Christian heaven or whatever. I just read it as a place of bliss that was connected with her sacrifice. So I always looked at it like that. But season 5, a really cool season as well with, The Gift, perfect ending. Just, tiny story about season 5. Season 5 starts with an episode that is actually not that good. It starts with a Dracula episode. Buffy fighting an iconic vampire like Dracula. And you know she can't really kill him because he's Dracula. And that part of the episode does not make sense. And then she gets home and she starts a fight with her sister, Dawn. And there I was watching that episode and she starts fighting with her sister. And I was just, did I miss anything? Why is there a sister? What's going on here? And
but it's brilliant.
Here's the thing. I know that there are a lot of people who don't like Dawn, and obviously not everything they did with the character was perfect. But I always thought that the inclusion of Dawn as a plot device, basically in the beginning, was a brilliant move, and kind of threw me as a viewer, just threw me off in the best possible way. Figuring out what Dawn was and being part of the journey of how the Scoobies found out who Dawn was. Yeah, that was just a brilliant move. And season 5, also a season that I quite enjoyed.
Yeah. I mean, just to talk about Dawn again, it kind of, to me, it first felt like one of these usual or normal TV series retconnings they often do. Oh, there's suddenly this new character that was never important before, but no, it always existed. and so I was like, who's that? And then they were kind of retconning it. Okay, I'm done. Then slowly realizing with the Scooby Gang that Dawn wasn't always there, that there is really a higher power at work here. That was cool. That was a brilliant move. Yeah. And you're right. The season finale, it is both heartbreaking and it's really, really awesome. And, if the TV series would have ended right there, I probably would have been completely content with it. I would have thought, well, fine, this was great ending and everything. But of course, I love that they brought Buffy back, so I'm happy about that.
Perfect ending, perfectly fitting ending to the character. But obviously, without season 6, we wouldn't have Once More with Feeling. Season 7 had some pretty cool moments as well. Yeah. But The Gift would have been a pretty cool series finale as well.
Yeah, it would have worked.
Yeah, definitely.
So that would have been great. But so we got another series, another 2 seasons, and I'm really happy about that as well, because they introduced couple of new characters like Tara, which I found a very great character.
Well, Tara was introduced in season 3, wasn't she?
Oh, she was introduced, but we got in season 6, we got her to the main cast.
Yeah, for one episode.
For one episode, yeah. and this is just the gimmick that Joss Whedon did. He added Tara to the opening credits to the main cast, just in the episode that he would kind of get rid of her.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did.
No, I love the character of Tara.
Yeah, very interesting character.
Yeah. What would be your favorite character besides the triangle of Buffy, Willow, and Xander?
There are so many cool characters where I see a little bit of myself in them. There's certain aspects of Willow that I see myself in. There's certain aspects of Xander that I see myself in. I'd probably go with Willow, but if I'm really honest, and my favorite character in the Buffyverse is Wesley.
Oh. Oh, yeah, he was introduced in Buffy.
He was introduced in season 3, I think.
Yeah.
As the handler of Faith, I think. Yeah. Her first handler, yeah.
But he becomes cool in Angel, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's more like... So in Buffy, I would say Xander or Giles. Or, no, I think Willow or Giles. But obviously, it's like picking one of your favorite children, and I don't even have kids. And it's really hard. What about you?
And you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you shouldn't do that. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I liked Willow the most, but if I'm excluding the main Scoobies and excluding Giles, which I love as an adult even more, I would probably say Oz. I always liked Oz a lot, and I was very sad when he left the show. It was a great way how he left.
Yeah.
It was a great episode, I think. And he returned for one short episode later and again gave something to the rest of the Scoobies that I thought was great advice from someone who knew them and now has outside knowledge. But yeah, probably Oz. Well then, how do you watch the episodes today, if you want to watch them? Do you still have the DVD set?
I have them on DVD. Yeah. Are they streaming anywhere? I don't know.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, which is a shame. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many bad shows with vampires out there. They should actually put a good one on one of those streaming services.
Yeah, it's definitely something that Netflix or someone should take on to, because it's an awesome show. Yeah. And I don't think the DVD set is available anymore. They replaced it with a truly awful Blu-ray set, which would be a great idea, especially having 16:9. But the problem is, even though they've recorded the show in 16:9, Joss Whedon knew that it's just 4:3, and so sometimes in these scenes there are members of the crew or microphones or camera stands. It's really, really bad. I don't know who greenlighted that, and even worse, they have forgotten to add some sort of light filter to it. So most of the scenes that are actually in the night, they're just broad daylight. They're just filmed in broad daylight and no filter there. It's awful. It's something that Buffy didn't deserve.
Yeah, it was probably cheaply made somewhere from people without any connection to it, so no passion whatsoever. Yeah, it's just a shame. I mean, a really good HD transfer of Buffy for one of those streaming services, I would actually I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
Yeah, make a proper version, please.
Yeah,
please.
Just keep it 4:3, but make some digital enhancement or whatever, but don't touch it, really.
Yeah. Just leave it be. We just want it HD, and otherwise leave it be.
Exactly. Exactly. So once Buffy ended, the show was kind of continued, wasn't it? In comic form.
Comic books, yeah.
Did you read any?
I've read some of them, not all of them, but I quite enjoyed those I read. Kind of, it continued the story. Obviously, budget was not an issue anymore. So they had kind of a few interesting ideas on how to continue those storylines. I think it went somewhere that they created an international agency for all the Slayers they created in the series finale. So there were actually some pretty cool issues. But I think at some point it just dropped off because there was so much other stuff to read and to watch. And yeah, I mean, for me, Buffy will always mostly be those 7 seasons of television.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you read the comic books?
No, I've bought a couple of issues and kind of lazily leafed through them. For me, it was okay. With the ending of the 7th season, it was okay. I was content. I wasn't just in the mood. Maybe I give it some try in the future, but right now I didn't read any of them.
Some of them are quite good.
Okay, we'll look into them. Well then, Greg, do you want to add something?
Not really. I just hope for those of our listeners who've never seen an episode of Buffy, our conversation made them interested in checking it out. And we didn't spoil too much, hopefully. I mean, it's a show that's been off the air for 18 years, so yeah. Spoiler alert. No, it's just Buffy, a show that's very near to my heart. And I hope that, with our little episode here, we could encourage some people to check it out. Any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, obviously we could talk a lot more about Buffy, and there would be a lot more I wanted to talk about. But I think we gave a good gist of what Buffy is and how it fascinates us. Our highest recommendation to watch it any way you can, just not in the HD Blu-ray.
Just not on Blu-ray,
yeah. I think we did a great job bringing Buffy a little closer to our listeners. And I think we will wrap it out for today.
Yeah, let's wrap it up, yeah.
So then, this is it for this week. Please like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. We're on all major podcasting services and on www.passionofthegeeks.com. And you can send questions and suggestions to passionofthegeeks@gmail.com. And you can find us on Twitter at PassionOTGeeks. This is it, Greg. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yeah, as always, a lot of fun. Take care, Pat.
Take care, Greg. Beloved sister, devoted friend. She saved the world a lot.